This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. In a world saturated with external pressures, diet culture, and societal expectations, it's easy to lose touch with the signals our bodies are constantly sending us. However, our bodies also possess a remarkable ability to communicate those needs, desires, and boundaries if we're willing to listen. And lucky for you guys, our guest today is the person who helps empower people to do just that. So we have Jenna Altman, and Jenna believes that our bodies are always communicating with us. We've just become distracted by outside pressures, diet culture, and other people's opinions on how much we should or should not eat and how we should or should not move our bodies. So during our conversation today, we will explore insights into the power of listening to our body's cues, finding joy in movement, and nurturing ourselves through mindful nutrition and lifestyle coaches. Jenna is also the CEO of Harvest Coaching, which I know we will learn more about through this discussion, where she empowers women to come back to their bodies through nutrition, lifestyle, and fitness. Jenna, love to have you. Welcome. Let's kick things off. You brought up this interesting phrase that I've not heard before. What is the inner guidance system, and how did you go about doing this type of work?
Yeah. So first of all, your intro was beautiful. I just want to highlight that. I feel like you said it way better than I can say it, which is awesome. But I think that where this kind of stems from was this recent period of my life where I realized that so much of my own journey has been influenced by other people. And this is outside of nutrition as well, right? Yes,
Yeah.
I have been influenced in terms of fitness and nutrition by other people and by things outside of myself, but also just in life. So many decisions that we make or so many paths that we take, I feel like are a direct result of something that we either inhabited from somebody else or something that we learned once upon a time and grasped onto and held onto for a really long time.
The conditioning.
The conditioning, it's so real, right? And it spans across both nutrition and fitness and other areas of our lives. And so when I started thinking about like what this work looks like, right? Because I'm not your traditional like weight loss coach. That's not really what I help clients do. But I work in the health and fitness space. So how do I like make sense of this? And I started to realize that what we're looking for is the sense of empowerment, the sense of being able to make decisions that feel good to us, right? Because so much of that outside noise and outside perspective and diet culture and our upbringings and all of the conditioning that comes along with that has now influenced how we eat something or choose not to eat something, or how we choose to move our bodies or how we choose not to move our bodies. And I think that when we can tune back into ourselves and our inner guidance system, that is where we should be making decisions from.
I love that. It's like with all this conditioning that we've been through throughout our entire lives, we sometimes have to learn how to trust ourselves again.
Yes. That's the season I've been spending a lot of time in recently, and it's challenging. Very challenging.
Tough. You get so much information, whether it's social media, your friends, your parents, your family, whoever. And then you're supposed to sit here with this information and divulge like, okay, this is good for me. This isn't good for me. I've got 40 different things to try. Where do I start?
Exactly.
So let's start with that. I mean, you talk about helping women overcome these external pressures and this influence. What does this work look like when helping women cultivate healthy relationships with their bodies and this kind of inner system that we're talking about?
Yeah. So like you said, most clients will come in with this idea that they should be doing XYZ, right? And this list can be small, this list can be extremely long, but they've never really taken into account what they actually can commit to or what they're able to do during the season. And so first, we kind of start by just addressing what's kind of coming up for them, right? They come in with this idea of what coaching should look like and what they should be working on. And a lot of the time they interpret that I'm going to tell them what they should and shouldn't be eating. And I'm like, that is not the case, my friend. And so that almost though can be intimidating for them because they're like, wait, you're not going to tell me what I'm eating? Then like, what is the work that we're going to be doing together?
Yeah.
And that's a valid question, right? Because again, we think that when we hire somebody to help us or to work with us, that they're going to give us the answers, that
Mhm.
they're going to provide us with the next steps or what we should be focusing on. And yes, of course, I'm going to give you direction and we're going to be able to evaluate what would be best for you. But ultimately, the first thing that we look at is just in general, like, what does your life look like? What can you realistically commit to? What feels best for you in this season, right? Because that can change throughout your entire life as it should, right? So one thing that worked for you when you were 20 years old might not work for you when you're 35. So it's being able to identify first what's going on? Like what's coming up? What things do we have that are maybe influencing us? What things, if we could pick out our ideal healthy lifestyle, like what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
And from there, then developing kind of a game plan as to how we can attack that and just doing small, tangible things at a time, again, that feel good for you.
Small tangible things that you're able to bite off. It's like we put on these to-do lists, like I've said this before, we put these things in our to-do list that are so unobtainable when we just need to start small. And I think, like you said, we are in a culture too where it's like it's instant gratification. So you come to a coach and you're like, I just need you to tell me what to do. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between being a coach and being a consultant.
Yes.
And there's a roundabout way, not roundabout way, there's a unique way on how coaches help people get to those solutions that work best for them. Because I can give you, a bunch of different recommendations, but at the end of the day, a person's going to need to decipher which is best for them.
Yeah. And that's really like it's just helping them build the confidence
Yeah.
to be able to tune back into that, right? And to be able to take back those decisions, the decision making for themselves. Because here's what I've realized is that most people intuitively know
Hmm.
what would be best for them, right? It's just this matter of being able to identify it, right? And so instead of looking at or listening to, and I'm guilty of this too, right? Like if I want to know something about something, I'm like, oh well, I'm just going to read 10 books on it, listen to 15 million podcasts, and
Hmm.
then I'm going to know what to do.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the way, then I get lost and I'm like, now I just feel like I have too much information and now I feel like I can't move anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's been
Information overload.
so real, especially in the health and fitness
Yeah.
industry. So, yeah,
Well,
I
because
really,
there's so much complexity to it also because when you just think about like supplements and it's like, well, this supplement is good for this, but if you don't take it with this, then it doesn't really activate as much as you want it to. And then if you take this supplement and you take it with this, then actually it counterbalances it. And it's just kind of like, oh my God, I don't have, I'm a normal person. I don't have a nutrition degree. Like this is not my day-to-day work. Like there's so much of that you try to sift through. And so, yeah, you got to trust yourself. You got
yes.
to be able to look at these things and say, where I'm at in life, this isn't going to work for me.
Yeah. And I think even on the topics of like supplementation or even like some of the biohacking that we're now seeing kind of all over social
Thank
media,
you,
I
David
think,
Asprey.
yes, I think that those like are just, that's like to me, icing on the cake, right? If you want to do those things, that's totally fine, but that should not be your main priority, right? Your main priority should be the absolute basics, right?
Mhm.
Supplementation, the definition of supplementation is like in addition to, right? Like in addition to the healthy lifestyle that you already have. So it's kind of like filling in gaps and optimizing, but we can't optimize until we have a foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge, and it kind of brings up for me how I've looked at my own relationship with my body, with food, with fitness, sleep. I thought me getting up every morning and getting my 6:30 a.m. workout in every single day, that's going to get me to fitness. And then I'm like, yeah, but you're not sleeping well, and that's impacting everything else around it. And it's this concept of like everything kind of needs to work in tandem. But one of the things that I've also recognized with a lot of these things that I'm seeing on the on social media, especially with like our relationship with food, is I guess is it the scarcity mindset? I don't know what it's called, but and you probably can tell us this more, but like when I remember when I tried the Whole30 diet,
Mhm.
I didn't have coffee or all the different things. And I remember the first 2 weeks, if I saw someone walk by me with bread, I was like ravenous. I
Mm.
was so frustrated. And so I also looked at, I was like, if I create these relationships with different foods, then not only am I going to want them more,
Mhm.
but I'm going to have this negative view of them and maybe even have that energy around other people too, which
Mhm.
doesn't help anybody.
Yes.
So on that side of things, I mean, how do you help people view their relationship with different things, such as carbs and sugar, when a doctor might be like, yeah, you need to cut out the sugar, can't do any carbs, you're diabetic, like can't do this. I mean, I feel like that just sets people up for failure if you don't have talk to me more about this. How do
Yeah, this is, I mean, relationship with food is probably like my favorite thing to support clients with because it influences everything, right?
you
Like the way that you feel about food and the experience that you have with food is going to directly correlate with how successful you can be within your health and fitness journey or on your way to reaching your health goals. And for me, that's a lot of where my background stems from as to why I got into nutrition in the first place was an unhealthy relationship with food. So this is like very near and dear to me.
yeah,
And you're right, right? It's like, okay, if we put this off limits now, inherently we're going to want more of this, or we're going to feel jealous when other people can have it and we can't, right? Which is just a guideline and a contract that we've set up for ourselves, right? This no one told us that we can't have those things. Although if you're following and listening to things on social media, you might hear like, I don't know, there's always a new food that like we shouldn't be eating, apparently, you know, like it's hard.
it contradicts what they just told us about eating 10 times the amount of it. Like,
Exactly, exactly. So, in my opinion, like I try and especially with clients, right? This is really ties back to just like all or nothing thinking, right? This idea of like I can either have all of it or I can't have any of it.
mhm.
And really what I work on clients with is helping them establish more of this like removing the healthy and unhealthy parameters of food and instead replacing that with like foods that we should have some more of and foods maybe we should have less of, but not cutting anything out completely, right? I'm a
Right.
huge firm believer of just like allowing your body, this comes back to the inner guidance system, allowing your body to tell you what feels good for your body and what doesn't.
Right.
Because if your body does not like a certain food, you will know. You will experience GI upset. You will
Mhm.
experience different symptoms, right? You will have less energy, right? Like you should be able to identify. And this is why we're not taught that though, right?
Yeah.
We're taught either hit your macros or don't eat these foods or eat a 1200 calorie diet or whatever, right? Like go Whole30. But we're not told, like, hey, actually, how does that food feel for you? How does that feel in your body? Because that is what you should and should not be eating in theory, or should be eating less of and should be eating more of.
The intuitive eating aspect of it, because I mean, sometimes I think we view food solely as fuel
Mhm.
versus understanding each bite. And I mean, I've even heard of workshops where you go in and basically you take like 3 minutes a bite
Yeah.
to just
Yeah.
just feel this out. But that's so true. I mean, like, and I think there's also things where, yeah, my body tells me it doesn't really like, a nice Italian pasta, but like emotionally, I really like some Italian pasta.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of toss up. And like, if someone tries to tell me that I'm not going to have my dark chocolate after every meal, you're not going to take that from me.
Me neither. I'm a big fan of that as well.
That's my glimmer. That is my moment of just, all right.
I love
Um, uh, yeah, I think that is interesting, and it's a lifelong thing. It's not easy, and I think sometimes you look at these things on the internet and you're like, oh, okay, well that's what I got to do, and then you don't understand that behavior change when you've been conditioned for many, 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 many years. You've got to unlearn a process, relearn a process, and then understand what the maybe internal reward system is for you or what you get out of creating these new habits. And I just feel we don't do enough of a job in those quick hits of content that we have.
Yeah.
And some do. I don't want to discredit. I think there are some really, really, I love following your content because of that exact reason. I think there's opportunities to give these little glimmers of, hey, you're on the right track. Just understand it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's such a tricky space to navigate, especially like I feel like, I started this journey back. Well, I really struggled with food in college. So this is going back to like starting in 2011. And
Mhm.
so like the landscape was different though. I didn't have the abundance of things that were in my face at that time.
Yeah.
But something that I've truly grasped onto and like where I'm hanging out now is this idea that there is so much nuance, right? Like I could not say that one thing is universal for, there are a few things I guess we could say that are universal for most people. But also, there are so many things that have become now like holy grail. And it's just, in my opinion, like that's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
There's so much nuance and individuality that needs to be taken into account, especially when we're talking about behavior change as it relates to health and fitness or anything else.
Mm.
So that's like the space that I like to hang out in. And guess what? Like that's not like the content that goes viral because
Yeah.
I sit in the middle of everything and I'm just like, yeah, this could be true for you, but it might not be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know until we try. And that's like
Right.
really what I execute with clients is like, let's try this on. Let's see how this feels. If this tool isn't working, if this strategy doesn't feel good for you, we'll pull another tool out of the toolbox, right?
Yeah.
That's how I feel that I can support clients in that space.
I love that. I spent a lot of years wishing I could be a runner and being
Mhm.
told I got it, even in like I did competitive cheerleading and we would have to run miles and miles. And, it took me until I was like 32 years old to be like, I'm not made to run. My body doesn't like that. I can't, I'm not, I just got to accept that. And the same thing for, my own fitness journey is I'm a yoga instructor and leaned so heavily into yoga and I got hurt doing yoga.
Yep.
And I had enough to the point where I went through 2 years of physical therapy and 2 years of my body just saying, nope, you're going to have to listen to me now.
Yes.
And that was the first time in my life where I was like, okay, I'm not made to run. I'm not made to do extensive, hypertension and hyper extensions. And I turned to Pilates, but it took me a while to just finally settle into that space and know this is where I'm at. And so it's trial and error too, but that's an uncomfortable space for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I want to be mindful of, time is so precious that it's hard to say, here's all these different things to try when, especially with, working moms and moms in general, people with kids, like, time is hard. Time
Yeah.
is hard because you don't get that back. And so you want to get to those solutions faster.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for folks that are in that space of like, I want to try all these things, but I just don't have the time?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, it's funny if I think about just how I was brought up in this industry and like assuming that everybody had 24 hours and like that whole situation. I've definitely changed my perspective on that in terms of like, no, people have a lot of commitments and people
Mhm.
have a lot of different things going on and responsibilities. And if you add kids into the picture, like good luck, like
Yeah.
it's a lot. But I think that something that I really stress with clients is that it's about finding your bare minimum, right?
Mhm.
And if that means you can only, squeeze in a 10-minute walk every day, like that's what you do,
Yeah.
right? Like, or not even every day. Maybe you work out once a week, right? Ideally, yes, of course, we could be working out more, but the idea is that you are able to commit to something consistently. It doesn't matter as much so the frequency or the amount of times necessarily that you're going, but that you are consistently going, right? Like I would prefer for a client instead of doing 5 workouts in one week and then, skipping 3 weeks of workouts, like I'd prefer for them to do 1 or 2 each week and
Yeah.
stick consistently with that. So again, it's just being realistic about what you do have
Mhm.
time for and then finding where you can fit things in based on that and based on all of the other things kind of going on in life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good, I think that makes it a bit more accessible to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Hear from that phrase. And, I think accessibility is a big thing that I think about in the health and wellness space because there's a lot of communities that don't have access
Yes.
or literally they don't have access to the certain types of resources, but these are the communities that need it the most.
Yeah.
And I know this is a little bit off script here for us in our questions, but when it comes to making fitness more accessible and helping people understand, how to break it down into times that they can include this, whether it's working moms or, again, underserved communities that need access to this kind of thing. What have you seen works, or what works is a very general phrase, but what have you maybe seen out there that has been a good influence for that roadblock, if you will?
Yeah. So I think, I do not work with populations in this degree,
Yeah.
but I will say that in general, like we can live very active lives without even really recognizing it.
Mm,
Like if you are, taking care of children and you are outside running around at the park,
yeah.
that's exercise. If you are somebody who is, doing a lot of household chores, that's exercise, right? Like exercise can kind of sneak in these little ways, and just what we don't want to do is be
There
like
we go. Yep.
constantly sitting, right? We don't want to be constantly in the same position every single day. That's where our body gets tension builds. That's where we build discomfort, right? And this goes for standing all day too, right? Like people who are like, well, I bought a standing desk. I'm like, okay, well, we don't want to stand all day either. Like
Yeah.
alternate between the two of like walking around, sitting, standing, right? Because your body gets stuck in those positions. That's not what our bodies were designed to move around.
Yes.
So in those communities, right, I think that it's important to recognize like, okay, I might not have access to a gym, or I might not have time for a workout, but I can still be active in my day-to-day life.
Mm,
Granted, there are no injuries, or there is no ability to move around, but that would be, I think, a good place to start for that. But yes, this is something that I struggle with a lot, like being in this industry. It's heartbreaking to me because it's like I am serving a certain population, and how can we make these things more accessible? But also, you always have your body, right? You always can pop into a squat. You don't need to go to the gym
yeah.
to do those things. So that's another way, I think, too. And even yoga can be accessible in that way. But yeah, this is quite it's something that's very heavy on my heart, and something that I know we all need to do a better job of. It's just like I'm not sure what that looks like in terms
Oh,
of
sure, sure.
support.
And I don't think we're not going to solve that here right now, but I think the
Yeah.
answer that you gave is absolutely fantastic because you're correct. We still have our bodies. So just recognizing in the small moments when you're like, I've been sitting all day, stand up,
Yep.
go walk to your kitchen. The work that you're doing as moms, the works that you're doing, if
That's a
you're
workout.
it's a workout, the cleaning your house, that's a workout. Attending to your garden, that's a workout.
Yes.
But I think society kind of tells us unless we're going to a gym, unless we're lifting weights, unless we're doing these high intensity things, which, yes, incorporate that in some capacity. But we also need to make sure that people, the guilt aspect, the
Yeah.
guilt.
Yeah.
I didn't make it to the gym 3 times today or this week. Well, did you recognize that you were standing while you were working, that you were walking to the grocery store versus, driving to the grocery store, that you played with your kids outside for 2 hours? And maybe that's another conversation or, something that we need to recognize more to lift people up because the guilt factor that is in fitness and all these different things, that can be crippling.
I think that's what prevents people from being able to
Well,
find
yeah.
something consistently, like just
Yeah.
feeling like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
There's actually in research, right? It's actually called the what the hell effect. And it's essentially like it's more from like the nutrition lens, it makes sense, but you can also tie it from the fitness lens. It's this concept of like when you are like, I'll use the nutrition, but if you're like eating really healthy for the day and you're like really proud of yourself. And then maybe you have a donut in the break room and you're like, oh my gosh, I had a donut. Like it's the end of
Yeah.
the world. And then that spirals into, mindless eating or unwanted eating or unwanted, unhealthy behaviors. And that's the whole premise though, is like you get to this point where you're just like, well, what the hell? Like I already messed up. So why does it matter? And I think that's where the guilt comes, right? It's just like that guilt is overwhelming instead of recognizing like, all right, I had a donut. It was delicious. I enjoyed it. Right. But
Moving on.
that was exactly moving on. That's it.
I did the what the hell last night where, I've been trying not to. I didn't want to have like drinks during the week and, hello summer events and all these different things. I had a cocktail. And then I was like, what the hell? I'm going to have a cheeseburger too and French fries. And it was amazing.
So good.
Amazing. Five Guys, burgers and fries, man. They got it.
Oh, so good. They have great fries. I'm a big fan. And the peanuts. I like that they have peanuts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Those are a lot of work for me. So I'm just like, leave those
too
to
much
me.
work.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say like on this topic of just like, yeah, like what I teach clients, and essentially I have this 4-week live workshop that's starting at basically the end of May, and it's basically like eating on purpose, right? So like we still want to be intentional about the ways that we eat, but there still has to be like some framework and structure around it, but also allowing, and one of the experiences that we're going to do together is bring your favorite snack that you have considered off limits. And we are going to make this an experience. I am going to invite in your senses. We are going to be really present with this food and we are going to enjoy it together. So we can take the fear away and we can take the guilt away, and that this can be a really like intentional experience. Cause that's like,
yes,
this is like it's like for me, I do this real time, right? If I'm eating something like this happened to me this weekend. I ordered these short rib tacos and I was like, okay, tacos, cool. They were fried, like the outside of the taco was fried. And I was like, oh, why is the taco fried? And the guy, like almost when I ordered it, like looked at me like, the short rib tacos? I was like, yes. Like almost like as if he was like doubting why I ordered that. And I was like, then when he brought it over, he's like, I do tell people like they're kind of like heavy, but they're really yummy. And I was able to enjoy those tacos. And then I was like, also, I know that the friedness might feel like a little much for my stomach. So I was like, you know what? For the last one, there were 3 of them. I was like, I'm just going to eat a little bit of the meat out, just to like get it, but I don't want the rest of the taco. That to me is like purposeful eating, like intentionally being mindful of protein, being mindful of how the food is cooked, and being able to make that decision real time. And I felt fabulous after, and I had ice cream after, and everything was fine.
Yes. I love this. And the thought of being able to come to your program with like a plate of French fries from my favorite places and just like mindfully eat my French fries for a few hours.
Yes.
That's some good shit.
Yes. I was so excited when I thought about that. I was like, this is how we're going to get over this. We're going to literally do it real time.
Wonderful. And maybe we even share. I'd be curious to see what comes up because French fries and macaroni and dark chocolate. I mean, I think I have a lot of vices actually. So
I haven't decided what I'm going to pick yet either, but I love pretzels. That's probably my go-to. So I'll probably do that.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on time here. And I think I'd love to end on maybe giving the audience some practical tips or strategies for, how you help people tune into their bodies and develop that stronger connection. What would you say, I guess to boil that down, what would be like your step one? Here's one takeaway.
Yes. Okay. This is challenging because I'm like, where is step one? That's where I always get. Okay. So I think step one, based on what we shared in this episode, right, of listening to your inner guidance system and being able to identify what your body is trying to communicate with you, because it's communicating with you in many different ways, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the first thing that I would say that we can pay attention to is, what are the rules that you have established for yourself in terms of, fitness, nutrition, healthy lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what are the things or the beliefs that you have maybe adopted, that you are conditioned to believe? Because we can't really do the body stuff until we like sit with the mind for a moment and see what's coming up there. Because once we can dive into that, then we can strip those beliefs away to then be able to, or they might still be present, but we can at least like, okay, I hear you, I see you, but also like, what is my body saying to me? Right. And that's where we can dive into more of like tangible tools from there, which one thing that comes to mind would be just paying attention to what your body is saying in terms of your hunger cues. That's a good one to start with, right? Like, and a lot of people maybe don't hear them at all, which is very normal if you haven't paid attention to them.
Mhm.
That one will take some more time. But again, first, beliefs, conditioning, like what do we believe about nutrition and what is actually true for us? So
Yeah.
much of what we believe is not actually ours. So how can we start to identify what feels good for us?
Fantastic. This goes to show how my mind works, but when you said hunger cues, I instantly imagine this like trailer of like the Hunger Cues. Like a parody on like the Hunger
Hunger
Games.
Games.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually now I'm thinking like
There you go,
maybe
new content
for
series.
my workshop. Yeah, I'm like, should we do it? Should we call it the Hunger Games? Bring your
Or just
food.
the Hunger Cues.
Yeah.
Bring
Yeah.
your hunger cue. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I
I could
like it.
elaborate that on all day. Jenna, how do people find you? How can we connect with you?
Yes. So actually, I do have a podcast as well. It's called Mindset, Metabolism, and Movement. So I do weekly episodes there. Going to switch to bi-weekly this summer, as in 2 episodes a week. But I love that's like where I get to have these conversations like we've had today. And I think that that's my favorite space to hang out in. You can also connect with me at my website at harvestcofit.com. And then I am on Instagram. I might be taking a little hiatus here shortly on that, but it's Jenna Ray Altman.
Awesome. Jenna, thank you so much. I'll have a bunch of those links in our description. And I think there's a lot of fun and interesting nuggets that the audience can take away from today. So appreciate your time, appreciate you, and look forward to seeing you shine.
Yes.